Good evening and welcome back to the first nerdsatnite podcast of 2017. Or the last, because we are only about a week or so away from the inauguration of President Cheeto. So here's hoping we survive. But as always, this is Kid Thunder DJ, joined by the Marty Jannetty to my Shawn Michaels.
Fire 47.
And that's one for you wrestling kids out there, because I know Brandon doesn't get the reference.
No.
Anyway, so obviously we've been away for a while, and even longer if you look at the YouTube channel, and I know I've promised like 2 or 3 different videos, I promise they're coming. We finally got some things in position. Part of the reason why we were away a little longer than we were intending, in addition to a toy show last weekend, was I started a new job, and that caused a lot of schedule changes for me, so we kind of had to jumble a lot of things around to get the time to do this.
Yeah, between that and just the general holiday business.
Right. But everything's died down. We don't even have a show again until March. So everything's good. So let's get started.
Speaking of, how'd the show go? Or toy show go?
Well, it went pretty good. And, good thing English is your second language. Oh, wait. Anyway.
Well, I was about to say just show, but then I kind of mixed toy into there and just kind of...
You just stopped talking correctly. Yeah. Let's be honest. English just stopped for you for a minute.
No, just mixed words. Anyway.
It went pretty good. Did a lot of trading. Like, it's weird. If you go by the holiday value of some of the stuff I traded, people would think I got ripped off. Like, I traded 5 really good complete in box Jaguar games for $100 cash. Tales of Symphonia complete in box. Quattro Sports and one other game that were loose. And everybody's like, at the time people were like, well, it's not really a good deal because this is what it's all going for. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. A lot of these titles that are down in value right now are because they're easy dumps at Christmas.
Right.
By the time the next toy show comes around and taxes have come out and everything else, their value is going to be way more than what I traded off. Plus, I flipped 5 games I basically had nothing in for $100 cash up front and future investment inventory.
Right.
Oh, Quattro Sports was the other one. I can't remember what I said the other one was.
Yeah.
I might have just said Quattro Sports twice, so I don't know.
Yeah, you said Quattro Sports the first time, so you're missing another one.
Yeah, but oh well.
Yeah.
And I mean, of the 5 Jaguar games I traded, the only 2 that were really going to be like immediate quick sells were Alien vs. Predator and Kasumi Ninja. The rest were going to sit.
Yeah.
So.
And, this one just piques my interest because, it's the series I'm very into. Tales of Symphonia is probably going to go for a lot because that's definitely the big name title for that series.
It is. And again, it dropped down pretty heavy for Christmas, but it's going to go back up. And when it goes back up, it's going to be worth easily 3 times what the guy who traded it to me assessed its value as.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes and move on. I did find a couple of interesting little toys, mostly Power Ranger stuff. I found a couple of the original Triangle Pact figures, which were the 2 Girl Rangers. And then for a friend of mine, I found they did for the girls, and this actually will tie into a movie topic later, they actually did Power Ranger dolls. Like, the best thing I can compare them to for other people is they're kind of like the old Mego toys. But you could change them out of their Ranger uniform into their street clothes. And I found the Pink Ranger one for a good friend of mine who loves the Pink Ranger, and she's, those were a doll set she actually wanted as a kid, and her parents couldn't afford at the time, so now I got them for her. So
I think you also picked up like a Xena figure.
Well, yeah, that's just stuff I bought. Yeah, Xena figure for our roommate who loves Xena, the Warrior Princess for Elisa. We found her Darkstalkers DVD and some other stuff. I didn't really pick up much for myself this time. Got like some figures. I got a classic Carnage figure and one other figure, and a Pinky plush from Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, for me, you ended up trading out, I think, for to your buddy Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon for DS.
Yeah, picked you up a game.
That one was pretty. I've been playing the heck out of that. I'm like 10 chapters in. It's pretty fun.
Nice. And I finished the set of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle WWE figures finally, even though that happened after the show. Yeah. But I've got all 4 of those guys now. So all in all,
plus some spares.
Yep, pretty good period. Ready for the break that we'll get before the next show. And although obviously, if you're still looking for anything retro, please reach out to us. nerdsatnitegaming@gmail.com. If you're looking for it, let us know. We may have it. We ship. We take PayPal. All of that. So other shameless plugs, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdsatnite. You can also find us at Twitter at nerdsatnite. Our website is still there. I mean, we are going to start updating its content soon too, which is also nerdsatnite.com, and then also YouTube which is also Nerds at Night. So lots of things coming up with the new year.
Nerds at Night at all the places. You'll
right.
find us.
You'll find us. So let's move on. So obviously this is our first show of the year, and like everybody else in any form of media, we're going to sort of take a look back at the last year just from a gaming standpoint, you know?
Yeah.
I just kind of real quick, to me, like the high moments in gaming was Watch Dogs 2 sort of redeeming its series and giving it a chance to survive. Because I didn't want to just say, oh my god, these games were great, because, you know, Watch Dogs 2 has its flaws. Well,
right.
If you remember. The Nintendo Switch reveal was awesome because it did show a lot of things about where Nintendo's going, and then, you know, and I know a lot of people are like, well, the conference that announced all the details just happened. That's not what I mean. Just knowing that Nintendo was doing something,
yeah,
that announcement was pretty cool because the Wii U took a beating.
Yeah, they had terrible marketing and
right,
everything else.
Like it was said in a lot of the industry rags.
Just didn't have things that like it didn't
grabbed
have
you.
Yeah, between that and
well,
it didn't work for developers because they really
exactly. It was so hard to code for. You had to make use of that paddle in most things, and in fact, in the early tech demos, a lot of people thought that screen was an add-on for the original Wii.
Right.
So it was just a mess. But it's
nice to see them drop the Wii branding.
Finally, yes. But the Switch.
So now it shouldn't have that much of an issue anymore.
Right. It's definitely something new. You know, you're dealing with something new.
Right.
So that was a big deal. TitanFall 2, WWE 2K16 were highlights. TitanFall 2 because it showed, and we'll talk about this more here in a minute when we get to dive more deeply into it, because we actually got to really go in depth on it. It showed you can have a largely squad-based shooter, online shooter, and still give it enough of a story to help you get through the more mundane training. And we'll go into better detail about that later. It has its flaws, which we'll bring up as well. And, you know, 2K16 was WWE finally really starting to make the next-gen platform games, or I guess now current-gen, really, games matter and really start to get the feel of what they're going to be. And there's a lot of exciting things. So that's that. Lows for me, and I know you're going to look at me funny on this, the PS Plus lineup this year was not good.
It wasn't. I can agree with you.
Games for Gold. I'm not an Xbox fan. That might have been one of the few things to make me think about it, as that their lineup was consistently better. There were a few bright spots, but largely, and I got nothing against indie games. And there's a few I have that are fun. But when you're paying this much money a month or a year for a service, and
aren't much of a multiplayer gamer in the first place.
Well, not even that. It doesn't do much to add to the multiplayer experience. Like, servers still suck for a lot of games. You know, there's still problems with matchmaking and everything else, which I know some of that falls on the game developers, but some of it is the service.
Right.
If you're going to give us something, give us something. I'm not saying it's got to be a AAA title, but there are better indie games out there. And there are games that, you know, I mean, all this goes away if I stop paying, so you're not really giving me anything. I'm basically leasing these games. So, if nothing else, have a revolving monthly lease. Say you can lease one game of X value from that PS Now store.
Yeah.
You know, do something to make it a more engaging service.
Or throw out, like, some of the older, like...
Yeah, throw out some PS1 classics. Throw out some PS2 classics.
Yeah, PS1 and 2 classics would be nice. I was saying maybe, like, throw out, like, some of, like, the PS3 era ones. Like, maybe throw out Infamous.
Well, they do that every now and then. I will say the PS Plus is worse for PS4 than it is for PS3. But, you know, the rumor for the Nintendo Switch's online service is you're going to get a free NES or SNES title every month that you're paying for the service.
I haven't heard of any sort of release things like that, like the PS Plus or Games for Gold for Nintendo yet, but I did hear that they're going to make it where they're basically joining in on the online thing where you got to pay for it.
Well, yeah, and that's supposed to be part of it.
They're starting it after a good... Like, I think they're starting it in holiday 2017.
Of course.
Even though they're releasing in March, which I guess is to get...
Well, we'll save that. I mean, you got a whole section on this for this, don't you? Well, you watched...
I don't think we edited it in, but yeah, we'll talk about it at some point.
Well, I figured I told you to have it ready for this, so...
Yeah.
You know.
I got basically...
This is why you fall down the stairs so much. So, but there are some lows, obviously, beyond just the PS Plus lineup. No Man's Sky just because
Obvious.
it was obvious, but not for, well, okay, for the big reason of the content, but also because it just to me showed how much gamers still don't get advertising. I mean, we went through it with Watch Dogs 2, we went through it with everything else, and I know I'm sounding a little hypocritical with how we reviewed them, but that's kind of our job, such as it is with this. But still, you knew that there was no way with the shaky vagueness of everything they were saying in interviews and everything else, that all of that was going to be there.
Right, that it wasn't gonna, that would deliver.
Right. But still,
And
it's still a low point.
And it kind of happened with the same one of your next point I can read on here.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 15 I put as a... Now, Final Fantasy 15 is more of a disappointment than a true low point this year because there's a lot of things to like about it, but it just seemed like for every great idea they had, they didn't fully execute it, and there was a lot of confusing moments. Their inventory management's garbage. The combat gets very, very clustered and very, very confusing very quickly because it's like so much is going on that
visually, like effects, and then just
right, all the visual effects, all the character movements, the speed, the zipping around,
maintaining your party's health.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It gets to a point where next thing you know, they stop the action so you can see one of your party members fall over hurt, and it's like, what? Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And I mean, just a lot of good things in the game, but just, you know, it could have Final Fantasy could have been a lot and should have been to live up to its name a lot cleaner than that.
Yeah.
So what about you? What was your high marks?
For me, I had kind of trouble trying to like recall memorable games like from there, to be honest. But I kind of figured out some ones by the end of it. I'd say Dragon Quest Builders was one for me.
Yeah, short, but you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was short but fun. Like I was saying before, the issues that they didn't have any way to like continue. Oh God, what's the term for it? Like playability after you finish it.
Right. Yeah. There was no post game content.
No post game content. No randomly generated worlds. You had that Terra Incognita, which was kind of just a chore to play and get through because you had to go find everything, which is that's fine to have, but it needed a mode that you just had anything accessible.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Because once you get through the story, there was nothing else to do. Dishonored 2 is on my list. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I still need to actually like finish it, but it's been a joy to play. And then the other one that I think, this one was a high note for the PS Plus lineup, Fury. For me, I know you tried to get into it but couldn't because you had issues with the controls. But they're a lot more intuitive than you think. It's more or less like an action mixed with a twin stick shooter in all the best ways, and it's a boss rush, and it's very challenging and fun gameplay to me.
I see its merits. It's just not my style of game.
Yeah, I still haven't beaten. I'm stuck on the sniper.
Speaking of beating games, I never thought I'd actually finish the main story. I've actually beat the main story in Skyrim.
Nice.
I mean, I never do that in those Bethesda games. I mean, I did it for Fallout just because, you know, it was worth it for Fallout 4. But Skyrim's one of those games where I knew the ending story really wasn't going to be that good, and it wasn't. I mean, if we're being honest, everything about Skyrim really boils down to what you do in lieu of the main story.
Right, like
because the main story's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And it you know, oh wow, you spoilers, you're gonna go kill a dragon. Well, you've been killing dragons the whole game,
and it's nothing different.
Yeah, it's nothing different, and the way they do it more or less puts you in position to have all the help you need to do it. So I just kind of rolled out of the way and let my other people take care of them.
Yeah, all the allies you get.
Right, it was not bad, and I mean the story was good, but just action wise, it wasn't there for me. But anyway.
Anyway, back on my side, Lowe's Division. That one was...
Yeah, I mean, you know, for everything that could have been for a multiplayer online, there were the bullet-sopping enemies, the repetitive environments and story.
The terrible dark zones that were proud to be like the best point.
And they weren't.
Were just chaos and trash.
Right, yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, basically you get bored of it by 5 levels in. Mafia 3 had really nice potential, great graphics and everything. For the most part, there were some glitchy moments, but it just was sopped down by poor gameplay. Like, there was a lot of repetitive missions. How you have, like, the same kill animation for any time you execute any kind of gang member where you just, like, stab them in the chest a couple times.
Yeah.
It gets old. Just
That's
a lot of issues of something that had potential.
Yeah, and that happens a lot with games that have like special kill animations. You burn through them in the first level, and then it's just repetitive. Like, it's better when they spread them out as a way to finish a boss. Like, God of War did that right, where they didn't get as repetitive because you really only busted them out on either extremely large enemies or bosses.
Right, I was like, it's not
every enemy you fight.
It's not like one kill animation. It's like it's a cinematic experience
of multiple ones, and it fits. Yeah, it fits who he's killing.
Like ripping out the eyeball of a Cyclops, you're not going to do that for an eyeball of like
with
a two-eyed person.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, and then the other low, full-priced VR tech demos. Yeah. I'd throw that down for my last one. Just games that are being released. I heard a big one, like I saw, especially this one, EVE Online. I think not online, but like an EVE game, which is this like space game. Mm-hmm. You're in like a fighter cockpilot. Angry Joe, if you've watched his reviews on YouTube, he's one that I really can respect his opinion on. He puts his honest opinion forward and is very opinionated in that regard. This one actually made his top 10 worst games list because it was so good for what it was, but it was such a short and unfinished experience. You get like a couple levels for like full $40, I think, 40 or $60.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience that just isn't fleshed out. And
yeah,
it's an issue of like it's obviously going to happen for VR at the start. It's kind of like what happened with Wii and the motion gaming stuff,
right?
Where you get these couple
a lot of proof of concept stuff, a lot less
finished
depth.
Products,
but I don't know if I'd call VR yet a negative as a whole, but I do definitely think it's got a roads to go.
Well, not even that. I'm just talking about the price, the tech demos that are being like thrown out for full price when they're like not enough.
I get you.
Content to match the value.
No, I mean I totally get you. And then moving on from that, what are you looking forward to this year? Because mine, I mean, just to kind of always try to keep it around 2 or 3, Shenmue 3, which is rumored to be in development and coming out this year. Lego Worlds, which is sort of a sandbox Lego builder game. And just to see where they go with it, I'm really looking forward because it's one of the most recent coming up, Resident Evil 7. I really want to see what this Outlast ripoff is really going to be like.
Yeah, those look interesting. For mine, probably obvious again, I wrote down, Neo. I've been singing that game's praises since the demo last year.
Yes, you've been jerking yourself off to that one quite a bit.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Tales of Berseria comes out in a couple weeks. Pretty excited for that.
Another Tales game.
Exactly, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another game that I didn't really get into until I played the demo, Nier Automata.
That is the RPG geek game out there right now. That is the darling for you guys. I mean, our buddy Dakota is
the demo
all over
hit, and some people were hyped about it because cool, new Nier game, because that one was kind of a cult classic of its generation. The demos really pulled a lot of people into it because it has a lot of really good gameplay.
It sure does.
Good, fast-paced combat.
I mean, from everything I've seen, it looks definitely worth getting. So, that's the end of that year. Let's move on and remember 2016 for what it was, a horrible harbinger of everything that's going to come next, where the best and the brightest of us got the fuck off this rock. And I know I normally don't cuss on this thing, but man, just in celebrity deaths alone, that's got to be an omen. And actually I want to take a minute and talk about that, because I had a lot of people like, why has this year been so bad? And I just want to look at them and go, this is why other countries beat us. A lot of these stars that are dying were from the baby boomer generation, which is also, so they, that's what all these boomers grew up with, which means as our baby boomer, demographic ages, those stars are aging above them, and it's just dumb luck in math, and
it's their time.
It is, and it is really sad. And I know somebody's going to be like, well, not everybody, and this person, but by and large, most of them were within that age range.
Yeah,
to either been a baby boomer themselves or an expected entertainer of that group. So it is just sad that 2017 is not going to be any better. Is all I'm saying.
Right.
Get ready.
It's
That's all we need to say is just get ready.
Yeah, it's like it's that time.
Yeah,
it was inevitable.
If you like an older celebrity, they're going away.
Eventually.
But anyway, let's move on. So we teased this in the opening. Over the break, we decided to pick up a new game and give it a try, something we could play together. So we picked up a couple copies of TitanFall 2.
Yeah.
And I never played the first TitanFall. I'd heard all the reviews on it, that the multiplayer aspect was fun, but there was really nothing else to it, and I always avoid those games.
Yeah, nothing to keep you around, like another Evolve or things that had cool concepts, just nothing to make it last.
Right. Now, we've been playing it, and I still jump on and do the online. A couple things that really stood out to me. First of all, it may have really only been a story to help you understand how to play. Just sort of a really long, about 5 or 6 hour training mission.
Yeah.
But, oh man, did they cram some emotion and some really sort of high-octane action movie moments in that 6 hours.
Definitely.
Because the story was really good. You go from being this sort of washout soldier who winds up becoming a legendary pilot, and they show, which doesn't carry over well to the multiplayer side, I hate to say, but they show how you form a mental bond with your Titan and its AI, and, you really do feel for this guy and everything they go through.
And it's like, it's not just a robotic companion.
Yeah, it is your friend.
There's actual,
It is your friend and your partner. And then what makes it even better is, this shows off, this is all done in very, very beautiful graphics. I mean,
yeah,
multiplayer worlds, especially when they're just reusing a lot of the multiplayer maps in the single player mode, they tend to sort of skimp out on the background details. Not in this one. They really did their work and really made it look good.
Right.
And not bland and flat, which happens a lot. The different mech types are nice. There's a shooting style that really complements a lot of different players. Now, those are the positives. For me, some of the big negatives were, if you are playing online, there's no matchmaking balancing.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that Overwatch just knocked out of the park, is you're playing against, by and large, people who are somewhat around your skill level.
Like five levels either direction.
Right. Yes.
I've been, like you were about to say, like I've been playing Titanfall. I've been getting shot down by like level 38s and 40s, and I'm like level 5.
Right. So that can be a little annoying when you just literally stat-wise and equipment-wise don't stand a chance.
Or experience-wise, because and then with the leveling, obviously they have the unlocks you get as you progress. So they're
but it is slow.
Yeah,
progression is slow.
Yeah, they're having higher level weaponry and mechs that you can't get. I don't think you can buy them in any way. Was there a currency?
Well, I mean, you get points for all the things you do. Like you get these credits, but I mean like literally 1 or 2 a match.
Yeah.
Especially in the early going, until you get good enough to start getting certain high honors during the match. And then you can jump the gun and unlock stuff that happens through progression earlier, which then sort of makes it that much longer before you unlock something, because it's not like they move something else up and go, oh, you unlocked this level 8 mech type, well, we'll let you get the level 9 one next. No, you have to wait. So it's not really a worthwhile system to me. But, and you mix that in with mech combat that's good but kind of jerky on the controls. The controls are way more refined when you're just in your pilot mode. So, it's still a good game. I would say overall, it's definitely worth picking up, especially if you're a fan of mech games. Like, I came from the era of Armored Core, and I used to be a huge Armored Core fan.
Yeah.
And this has a lot of that same feel to me. This is where I think if From Software hadn't screwed it all up, this is where Armored Core could have went. And who knows, maybe the people behind Titanfall wind up getting their hands on the Armored Core license and do some kind of crossover or something and really make something special. But all in all, a good game.
Yeah, I had issues like controlling the Titans too. I'm definitely more suited for the pilot controls, hopping around the arenas. That's definitely a lot of fun. Is like the wall riding. And,
I mean, the moving through that game, if you have the grappling hook ability, the way you can Spider-Man certain things, is great. And that kind of, makes me think back to other games, kind of moving down to our retro area. There's a lot of these games that I find myself playing that were really annoying. Something about them really just always made you mad. Like in Titanfall, the player mismatching, or, the jerky controls where you'd be like, well, my mech is turning away from where I wanted it to aim. That's good times. You know,
or just like,
or the inconsistent abilities,
or things in like Final Fantasy 15, like the combat.
Right. Or, you're trying to focus on a guy and you've equipped your spell and you're hitting circle and you've got all the magic you need, nothing happens. Which has happened a couple of times.
Like you're in an animation. Well, that's the thing. If you're using magic, if you've just casted it, there's a reload time.
Well, no, I mean, literally just switched to it full, ready to go. It's happened a couple times. And it's happened a couple times with weapons, too. And it isn't a status effect, or at least it might be, but again, you go back to what makes the game frustrating, where certain polished aspects aren't there,
or you just
like they have been in the past.
Or there's just so much going on you don't notice it.
No, I mean, even if you look around, like, what's going on? You're missing the point. It's not just, oh, this isn't working. It's like, I'm looking at my character stuff. Like, I'll literally bring up the item screen so I can stop and actually look, because that'll pause everything for saying, oh, there's nothing that should stop my character from not doing this. What's going on? Because everything was happening all at once and so fast, it probably overloaded whatever was going on. But that's,
or was an animation. Yeah, anyway.
Right. But trying to get to the point I've been trying to make is, this isn't a new occurrence, but there are some games that are worth it, And I was thinking back to all the retro ones that I used to play that were like that. And one of the latest examples out of my collection, I own like 3 PS1 games. And I own Metal Gear Solid, I own Final Fantasy VII, and NHL Rock the Rink. Let me break it down. They basically succeeded in capturing that NFL Blitz feel for hockey. Now, NHL Hits for Xbox and eventually PlayStation and PlayStation 2 did it a little bit better, but this was the first game to step out. It was 3-on-3. You had to play through all these made-up teams in a league mode to then turn around and start beating and unlocking real teams. You had players that you equipped and eventually could buy like all kinds of crazy gear, like metal pads and sharpened skates and stuff. But, fights were presented more like, not really wrestling because it was still hockey style fighting. It was still punching and stuff. You could throw a knee every now and then, but there could be a guy on your team with the belt, which gave him an amped up skill set. And if you defeated that guy in a fight, you got the belt. So, little things they threw in there. You mix that in with just the goofiest commentary, not only from the in-rink guy who's announcing what's going on to all the fans watching, but the guy, who's supposed to be the TV presenter. Really sort of hilarious back and forth and commentary there. But the worst controls ever. AI that would go from, teams that were supposed to be super weak owning you to you skating to victory over, at the time, this is back in their dynasty, the Detroit Red Wings. Just not consistent AI. Yeah. But man, I mean, fast gameplay, 3-on-3 with your, or 4-on-4 if you count your goalie. Just everything going on still makes that game hold up with everything other than graphics. Plus the opening song with Celebrity Skin by Hole. So, I mean, come on. But definitely check that one out. And there's been others too. Believe it or not, the Shadowrun for Genesis that I love so much. That overhead view can be really difficult, especially when you're in a gunfight. Sometimes enemies just do out of nowhere damage to you, even though they're not supposed to be that strong. And the difficulty in always tracking your progress in stories. But still, I'll play the hell out of that game.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing their gameplay for that.
Right.
Our video on that, I had some issues with that.
Right. So what about you? What is the game that frustrates you, but you still love to play it? Because I hear you all the time. So I know they exist, where it's like, there's
the ones there's the ones I get pissed at, like,
exactly.
Just recently with, like, TitanFall.
That's the point.
That's the thing. That's not retro, though.
I mean, like, but I know it's happened in games in the past.
Yeah. I mean...
So what games did you used to play that were still like that? It doesn't mean if you still play them now.
I mean, there's a couple things, like... I guess you could say things like... There's always,
This is why I failed at school, folks.
There's always, like, the one mission or two for things like... When I think back on it, like Jak 2 and Jak 3, there was always, like, 1 or 2 missions that were just the fucking worst.
Yeah, that happens a lot in games. Like
there was this weird-ass, like, Pac-Man game, or Pac-Man minigame ripoff.
Yeah.
In Jak 2 or 3, where you basically had to, like... I don't think... what was the one where you... I think it was an Atari game, where you were basically driving over these dots, kind of like Pac-Man, but you were a car. And then you had another car going basically the opposite direction of you.
That sounds like City Connection.
Maybe something like that, where you basically had this square grid shaped box.
Yeah.
Little areas, and you basically were going against the opposite direction of a
Yeah,
rival car.
that sounds like they took some elements of Pac-Man and City Connection and put them together. So,
Yeah, it was
but
basically
just to
something
move
like
on.
that. Yeah, and that was always the freaking hardest thing for me to finish, and that usually would stop my progress in that game.
Yeah,
Like, because you needed to beat it to get to at least you needed to finish it once, for a story quest to continue with the story for the Jack game, and I could never finish it for the longest time. I would luckily get it. I finished the game before, so I know I beat it like once or twice, but it was still always something that would stop me for a while. And then, but like beyond that, the other things I can think of would maybe be like fighting game bosses or cheap enemies, because like classic fighters like Tekken, Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat, you get all of those kind of annoying characters that will just halt your progress.
well,
Abyss, Soul Calibur 3, you just sit there and just be fighting him endlessly because you just be cheap as hell one and basically stun lock you.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Mortal Kombat 2 on with Shao Kahn.
Yeah,
There's another one.
Shao
Just
Kahn's famous.
fighting Shao Kahn was always a brutal asshole fight.
Yeah.
And by that I mean it continues all the way up to today. In Mortal Kombat 9, it's the same thing. So
yeah.
anyway,
I mean, fighting games are infamous for that.
well, yeah, especially in the old era because that was really all they could do. They really couldn't do much more to make it more difficult. So,
Or they were on the arcades and, they had to have something that basically made you keep eating quarters.
of course, but anyway, so that was just a funny little tie-in to Titanfalls. I just kind of want to get your opinion on that. So,
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about movies for a minute, though. I wouldn't call myself a huge Disney movie fan, but I have a lot of respect for them and what they do.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that Disney-type movies stay relevant in a world where really that, kid shows now have more levity to them and more seriousness to them than some of these movies. On the Disney Channel. So it's like, for them to still put out these movies that
topics.
to still get them is good. Now, one of my friends had shared this Cracked article about like 5 ways modern Disney movies are more sexist than the classics. Now, I'm not saying this guy's wrong, and I'm all for anything that brings to light the fact that, yes, Disney movies the overall stories of Disney movies are in need of even more refreshment than they've had. But I think he's fishing a little hard for arguments here and doesn't get the bigger picture, and that bothers me more because that's, and I hate to get political, but that's like saying, well, President X, Y, and Z's cut the joblessness. Well, maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. How many of those people have aged out of unemployment? How many of those people abandoned the workforce? How many new people have joined the workforce since then? What's actual job growth? There's almost always more than one side to how you look at things, and
Or what are these results
predicated on.
directed because of the
Just go with my answer because I think that's what you're trying to say.
No, like which of these are because of the president?
Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, how
like,
much of this how much of that could be attributed to
their work,
right?
Or what of this is just, a boss is starting to hire more people or something,
Right. So let's kind of go over some of the big points, and I'm going to kind of say where I disagree. If I remember, I'll put this article in the I'll put the link to this article in the description of the show. But if not, I'm sure you can find it. But basically, the fifth point he makes is that female characters have less dialogue, and he says than ever. Although looking at his graph, it actually not only seems like there's an increasing trend, that it looks overall a lot more balanced than he's wanting it to believe. So, but we'll start with a couple of the ones.
Also, and there's a huge serious gap in the timelines.
Well, that happens. That's just how Disney animation works.
Not a 10-year one though.
Yeah.
Between Mulan and Princess of the Frog.
Yeah, that was the last Disney movie. Mulan didn't perform as well as they thought. Now he's sticking with main things, so yes, there are probably sequels in here that were left out. But let's just start with the main ones that you're almost guaranteed to have seen if you're a Disney fan. So, and yes, men talk most. Here's the problem. In most of the early Disney movies, it's actually 50-50, and then it actually goes up. So let's look at the first block that starts between 37 and 59, which is Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. Respectively, it's about 50-50 dialogue. Now, that seems like, oh my god, the woman only speaks 50%. Well, think about it. There's Snow White and the Evil Queen, and that's it for women, that I remember right. You have the Seven Dwarfs, which I know not all of them spoke. You had the Prince guy, and you had, basically more male figures, and yet, for lack of a better term, 2 female characters still having 50% of the dialogue.
Yeah.
That's a tall order, not to mention the fact that animated movies, especially the modern era, are less dialogue heavy to begin with.
Right. A lot more action.
Cinderella has, the majority of the dialogue. Now, by majority, it's still about 60% spoken by women.
But in that one, you've got, Cinderella herself.
You got Cinderella, her sisters, her aunt, certain female animal characters. So that's
the fairy godmother.
Right. So there's definitely room to say there's argument, well, if it took that many female characters. But if you really add up how much that movie is visual action versus dialogue, it makes sense. There wasn't a lot of talking in that movie.
Yeah,
that movie relied a lot on action scenes.
Basically what this list is missing is
context.
The amount of dialogue.
No. That's how you could really shape it up. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. It's just really what I think you're going to find is the missing theme of this list is this guy has no sense of context.
Right.
I'm sorry if it's not a word heavy movie and you manage to hold 65% of the dialogue, it's a huge amount of dialogue.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a word heavy, movie and you're only holding 40%, that's a little bit different. And there are a couple movies where I agree. But, Sleeping Beauty has almost 70% dialogue women.
Yeah.
Where there's the prince trying to find the sleeping woman. Again, action-heavy movie. The Little Mermaid, almost all of the exposition has to be done through, what the hell's the lobster? Sebastian.
Yeah,
because for a good third to 2/3 of the movie, she doesn't have a voice.
Right.
So, of course, yes, it makes sense that only 30% of the dialogue.
Between
her and her
Sebastian,
sisters.
Flounder, everything else.
Right. So many of the characters she's surrounded by are men. That's the problem.
Also, does this include the songs, like in their lyrics?
Well, I don't believe it does, but even if it does...
Because a lot of those would also be, like, male and female talking at the same time, because they're both singing the songs. So, yeah, that'd be kind of confusing. Either way. But, yeah, I mean, like, some things yes, some things no.
Right. And, again, I think if you really look at this, part of the problem why there's so little dialogue for women is, especially in the movies where the main hero or main object is a woman, there's not many other female characters with them.
Right.
I mean, you get a couple, like you do get Cinderella, which had the sisters and the wicked stepmother, but
villains.
They're treated like villains, and they're treated like background characters so quickly to all the action shots that, yeah, that's where the problem comes in. I think Disney, if they really want to get more female dialogue, is make more ancillary characters female.
Right.
Now, this is going to tie into a point later on, so as to why this doesn't happen, but that's a fix. If you genuinely believe that Disney needs more female voices, don't give the main characters chunkier dialogue segments that are going to wind up turning fans off. Just have more of the ancillary dialogue and more of the exposition dialogue done by female characters. Yeah. Solves the problem. Because, you get to movies like Aladdin, well, 90% of that movie was Genie talking to Aladdin. Yeah. Jasmine makes a slight appearance in the beginning, and then, doesn't come back until closer to the end when he starts, actually trying to win her over.
Yeah, she's... And again, what you were saying before about, like, only 1 or 2 female characters, she's it.
Yeah.
There's, like, I can't think of pretty much any other female in that movie.
Pocahontas has a lot to do with, music and the ancillary action, and is centered around John Smith discovering her and her tribe, and her then becoming a more important character later on as things start going south.
Yeah, escalating.
Right. Now, The Princess and Frog I haven't seen, so I can't really speak too much to, Mulan, which is, again, both the Mulan and Pocahontas respectively have about 25%, the whole point of that character not speaking much is because she's trying not to give away the fact she's a woman.
Yeah.
So the longer...
And once again, one female amongst hundreds of guys, because, she's joining an army, and in that era, which is,
one of the themes of the movies,
which is accurate to the time period,
is it's all men.
Yeah, is that she's proving that she is capable and worth being in the space despite her sex.
Right, and then you have Brave and Tangled, which were very female heavy. Both of which Tangled had over 50%, Brave had 75%. Those are pretty good if you consider that there's other characters, like the bad guys were men and other ancillary characters. And again, the scope that this keeps missing is the problem isn't just to go, oh my God, Disney's being sexist because they're not letting women talk. No, that's not the message here. If you watch those movies, the female dialogue is proportional to the story they're telling.
Right.
What Disney should do then is go, well, and I don't want to bury the lead here because there is a point that he makes later on this is going to tie into, but let's forego some of that in favor of having one of the friends be a woman. So we can give women extra dialogue, so we can show them other ones existing outside the main character, although that's bad for business because the goal is to promote the one character. Whatever. So that's a lot of time on that. So the other number 4 is, and I think he buried this in the bottom of the list because he knew people would read this and realize it's bullshit. And the way he makes a smart-ass comment about it to the people reading this is kind of a jerkwad thing. He's talking about how they're marketing their films to look less girly. Now, this is aggravative. Okay? Yeah. And the reason why is he's not wrong. Disney made a choice after the poor performance of Princess and the Frog, which wasn't just how it was marketed. Princess and the Frog failed because it was traditional animation in a time when that was looked at as cheaper. Like, people who saw traditional animation didn't even equate it with Disney anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the other problem that really should have been the focus on this, it was centered around an African-American cast, which is automatically throws into that stigma of being a black movie, quote-unquote.
Yeah.
Because there is such a thing as a black movie. I'm sorry. There's movie with dialogue and character situations that are designed to appeal to the black community. It's Tyler Perry's made a career of it. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy them if you're a white person. There's some things Tyler Perry's done I've enjoyed. There's some quote-unquote black movies I find great. I love all of Eddie Murphy's early 80s and 90s comedies, and those were considered quote-unquote black movies at times.
Right.
So, but they were funny. And they worked. But Disney did make the decision that there's so many elements out there competing for your attention movie-wise. They had to make even a movie that would considerably be a girly movie have some appeal to families that have multiple children, different gender children, girls who aren't girly, which is becoming an increasing thing. There's a lot of little girls who grow up now not into the Disney princess thing, that are into more, what we would consider masculine things.
Like DC, Marvel.
Single dads are a thing now. If you have your little girl and you want to take her to a movie, you don't want to take her necessarily to a movie that's going to bore you that bad. So, we show you a trailer that is centered around the male characters. You can go, okay, I like this guy. I can put up with him for the rest of this movie, and she'll like all the girl stuff, which is also the same thing that could apply to your sons. But he treats it like in this article, like that all they've did is make gender neutral trailers, which is not true. For Frozen, for a couple of them now, Frozen, Brave, Tangled, they did sort of a mix. There was a just sort of gender neutral trailer that would show equal mix of all the characters, a boy-centric trailer that would show whatever the male character lead was, and then the traditional girly trailer that would feature a lot of the main character.
Yeah, there's always multiple trailers for these things.
So, but, if you believe this guy, every advertisement for Frozen just featured Olaf and the moose, which is not true.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not. So.
Yeah, he's basically limiting the information he mentions
to what suits him.
Right, to make his point seem more viable, which is not.
Now, here's another one that bugs me because it was true. he attacks Disney for the fact that these women still, quote unquote, live to get married. Now, It's true. A lot of these fairy tales that early Disney movies especially are based on don't have happy endings in the fairy tales. Little Mermaid ends with Ariel dead. Or turning into sea foam. Snow White only wakes up because of... Or one of Snow White or Sleeping Beauty one only wakes up because they gave birth because they were more or less raped. So, yes, Disney changes them.
Right, these fairy tales definitely do not... Or the movies don't match the fairy tales to the letter.
Exactly. And especially in the earlier movies, you know, family dynamics were back then that if you fell in love with someone, you got married. That was a society thing. Not saying it's right or it's wrong. And in fact, I like that we live in an era now where more people can just say, you know what? Our relationship's good like this. We don't have to get married.
Yeah.
And that kind of got brought to light in Frozen when, you know, the one sister who's going to get married to the guy she more or less just met, somebody points out, says you can't marry a guy you just met. Because I remember the internet exploding going, well, it took you 75 or however many years, Disney. But that was because that was how society was then versus now. But, of course, this guy is bringing it all up and taking every situation. And he's like, you know, Entangled, for example.
Yeah, he marks down the character that, you know, she gets with because he was a thief. And it's like, that's more or less kind of just against the trope of the thief with a heart of gold than anything.
Right. And he's like, well, he's still the first
man she's
ever seen. So that happens.
Yeah.
Sorry it didn't happen for you, but there are a lot of my friends still who were children of the 80s. You know, the 80s, the goddamn 80s, who are like, yeah, I've only ever been with this person. Is it realistic? No. But is it possible? Yes. Yeah. And it was still her choice. We moved on from you have to marry this person because you're a prince and she's a princess to, hey, you know, I like this guy.
Right.
And it's not the best thing.
Like the arranged marriages things, you know, like, and to continue that right into the next point, you know, Brave. He mentions that one, I believe, in this point, or one of the other points about where she's scheduled to marry one of these three different, or she's basically trying to choose which one she'll... Oh, no, it wasn't choose. They were competing.
Well,
they were competing. They had this competition going that whoever could beat all these challenges the best could win her hand.
Right.
And it wasn't whatever she chose. It was just whoever won, and she didn't like any of them. But, you know, by the end of it, she gets her father to agree to let her choose who she wants to marry. And then they're like, they kind of try to bring that down, like, oh, now she still has to marry, but she gets to choose. That's a very good step and a very good thing.
Right, and there's still cultural elements, especially in movies set in the past, where, yeah, you're expected to get married if you're royalty. It was all done to align countries. The fact she escaped the aristocracy...
That's what that point was specifically in
the
movie, was
marrying
a prince of these other three tribes.
Right, I mean, to escape the aristocracy of saying, you know, hey, I have to marry this guy because my dad says it's going to make his tribe or nation more in line with ours. It was, well, I'm going to choose who I want to marry. Now, of course, Disney, in an attempt to get away from the stigma of marrying princes, this guy points out, oh, they marry loners or thieves or slackers. Well, they're just more kind of showing that they're interested in every man. And the guy in Frozen that the sister winds up with, the non-freezing people sister, sorry, her name escapes me. Anna, that she winds up liking isn't a slacker. He's a hard-working guy. He's just a common laborer, but he's still a hard-working guy for the era.
I never saw the movie fully, so I wasn't...
I had to. Oh, my God. I had to watch a friggin' movie so many times. My son was just of age to discover music when that movie came out, and he loved Let It Go.
Yeah, he still does occasionally.
Yes, he still does. Yeah. But, I mean, there is progress to be made. Again, the whole thing about this isn't this guy's not necessarily wrong.
He's on the wrong points.
He's on the wrong points, and the points he's making, A, make him look uneducated, and B, kind of going back to that Patton Oswalt joke we mentioned last time, evil people who want to see Disney movies will be more sexist are going to use the proper terminology to tear this guy's argument a new one. Like, I'm not even smart and I'm doing it. And quietly hide those things a lot better because they can disguise it even better because it's always that learning thing. I would like to see a situation where, yes, a Disney princess chooses not to get married at all.
And
says, I don't need anyone. And we kind of got that with...
I was going to say, that could
we kind of got that with Elsa. Because she didn't end the movie being in love with anybody.
Yeah. And she was the main princess,
Well, she was the second main. She was kind of,
Well, didn't she have... Wasn't she the leader of the king?
Well, yeah, in the end, she becomes, she takes her rightful place. But yes, when she was off being Little Miss Ice Queen, she didn't want anybody. When she came back, she was more just being happy for her sister. And that's who the person she really loved, more than, falling for a man was, it was the love of her sister that saved the both of them. So, what's the problem here? You can't argue with the past at a certain point without looking at it culturally. And I hate to say that, because that is a cop-out, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's like if you try to watch movies now that were made in the 30s and go, well, I find this offensive. Well, it wasn't offensive in the 30s.
We learn was the one Disney movie that
and move on.
That had that black slave character. And then
a lot. I know the movie you're talking about, Song of the South. They never show that movie anymore.
Yeah,
that movie's never going to be released on DVD. It's never going to show again because it's horribly racist.
Yeah.
And not even horribly as in,
beating them.
Right, but it does sort of make the argument that
between
slaves are happy and
language and treatment.
Right. I mean, it's yes, there's a lot of culturally, offensive things, but
weren't that bad at that time.
Right, that were presented differently at that time, and it's not an excuse. And Disney did the right thing by basically saying you're never going to see this movie again.
Right.
Unless you own a copy already, it's gone.
They've erased that thing from their quote-unquote history.
Right. And that's the smart thing to do. But to then go back and attack movies that really fit their narratives for the time, weren't that offensive, still really aren't, because it's still the whole concept of the Disney classic fairy tale. And there's a lot of fairy tales we don't put any stock in. There's a lot of religion we shouldn't put any stock in either, because they're fairy tales too. So it's just stupidly annoying that...
The points they make.
Yeah, the points he makes. But let's move on to the last two so we can get out of this topic.
Yeah.
This is the funny thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because this guy doesn't seem to understand how animation works.
Yeah.
Every new character looks exactly the same. Wow.
Yeah, new female character. I don't think he said that.
Well, okay, yeah, new female character. Two things wrong with this. He mentions the DreamWorks face, the specific smirk every DreamWorks character has, and their movie posters. Look at every cartoon series, every anime, everything created that's done by a specific studio. Look at every Studio Ghibli character.
Every Studio Ghibli. Look at Mamoru Hosoda's films.
Right.
He's got very similar facial
structures. Look at all the people behind the Dragon Quest series. Every character looks the friggin' same.
Yeah, Akira Toriyama. Between the series he's done, between Dragon Ball Z series and the Dragon Quest games, you'll find the similarities between designs. He's the same guy. He's got a style. He's
of course, his unofficial analysis of the facial structures is every every Disney Pixar character male characters have vast more facial depth. I'm like, well, here's why. In most Disney movies, the villain has the more exaggerated looks. Because part of this is a psychological thing where if the main protagonist, male or female, although most of the time it is female in a Disney movie, their features are kept very sort of bland and neutral because it's to sort of allow that suspension of belief and that ability to put yourself in their position.
Or just that they look more natural as opposed to
Right. That's the other thing is...
And then there's still, again, on Disney's side, female villains that have, bad facial structure. You look at Ursula. From Little Mermaid, and
the greatest diversity, the greatest diversity in female appearance is villains, and yes, it's done just like the males to make them look more goofy. And yes, most of the time, male characters are also comic relief, so they want them to look different. They want them to be visually
normal,
right. We just don't notice it as much because most of the time it's a female lead with male characters surrounding her who are goofy or uninteresting. This problem, again, could be solved by making some of the more ancillary characters female.
Right.
So, again, other examples, watch any of the DC comic cartoons. It's so bad the males and the females in that look the same. They've all, if you're a hero, You've got a square jawline and kind of close together eyes and virtually no nose. If you're a bad guy or girl, you've got all these unique features. There's not one or two villains that have any similar features just about in those cartoons. It's just a style. And I'm sure some of it is ease of replication, especially in the digital art era. Being able to recycle polygons and recycle character maps saves a ton of money, especially considering that these, going back to the marketing thing, these movies cost $100+ million. You got to turn around and make toys out of these things. All this other stuff, there is a simplification, I'm sure, that's done just for the ease of saving money.
Yeah, in between animation and marketing for toys.
Exactly.
Like
I just said.
I was sort of saying, I was agreeing with your point. Like you look at, I remember seeing, it was some sort of, I think it was on Tumblr, some sort of like character breakdown of like different cartoon characters from things like the Disney Channel and Steven Universe from Cartoon Network, and a lot of other just recent digital age cartoons where they all had like the same face structure and smile. And then they basically broke that down to the, kind of like on this image of just the shape line and smile. And you can see where they all matched. And it's like, yeah, it really helps for animation in saving money and time in production.
Right.
And in some cases that does get kind of annoying in that regard because, like, everything starts to kind of just blend together and you lose some creativity.
But we're spending too much on that part because here is the one topic I really more closely agree with this guy on. He's not on the mark, but he's better. Yeah. And that is, he specifically says females can't be trusted with powers. And he's not wrong, especially that highlight of this was Frozen. Two of the main MacGuffies that move the point along are Elsa, all rooted in Elsa not being able to control her powers. Now, that's one way to look at it. I do think that it's just craziness. And again, some of this could be solved by who you make as your main heroes, because it's just the females wind up being the main heroes. Because what he neglects to mention is if you look at the overall concept of how they advance Disney movies, there's almost always, if it's going to be a more heroic tale and not a love-based tale, there's almost always a cataclysmic event that's either is the person's fault, but not as impactful as they thought it was, or was told it was by someone trying to get rid of them, or isn't their fault but is told is theirs, that sends them away for a while, only to come back and get their revenge and their victory. Frozen was that way, although they tweaked it really well with the sister seeking her out and more showing her that she still cares about her. But where it happened to male characters that they don't like to remember is The Lion King.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't Simba's power, but it was still, whereas Elsa froze the kingdom because she couldn't control her powers after, in thinking that it was her fault again, just like when she was younger and accidentally almost killed her sister and more or less running away from it. Simba is involved in the death of his dad, thinks it's all his fault, was told it was all his fault by Scar,
by the villain,
runs away. It's the same concept.
They're all motivators to inspire them to grow and then come back to fix
and be better and to fix themselves. Or it's another situation like...
It's basic conflict starter.
Right, Meridia on Brave, who trusts a witch. Well, that happened to Snow White, and she ate an apple and almost died. I mean, it's...
And even in that regard, that witch isn't necessarily a villain. That's just, I think that was more like the same issue with, like, wishing for something from a genie is you weren't specific.
She was the witch in Brave still was kind of a bad guy, but yes, I see what you're saying.
I never saw her as a villainous type. I saw her as like, well, she asked for this, and I gave her this.
I get it. And yeah. I think it was more she was trying to teach her a lesson, just didn't do it right. But yeah. we're getting into offhand here. The overall thing is, and I know I'm being more general than I should be, but this guy's being way on the deeper end, so if I can apply just a little bit more logic and get through his bullshit, then I'm okay. There's always that sort of hero's journey moment where something kicks them off to grow. And yes, this isn't the only time we see this. X-Men comics are rife with examples of how people can't control their powers initially. Some wind up running away and thinking they're evil because of it. Some learn and come back. The problem is, again, limited number of times in Disney movies and the overall formula that the main character is going to be female. You want to solve this problem. And I don't get his argument because he's like, hang on, let me pull up exactly what he says. Or if you compare it to Wreck-It Ralph or Hiro Hamada from Big Hero 6, who's like, they use their abilities to defeat their opposition. So do the female characters. And Ralph screws a lot of things up along the way because of his ability.
Definitely.
That's one of the biggest kick-starting things in the movie is his destructive abilities make him shunned by everyone in his game and really sort of runs him afoul of everyone he meets once he leaves his game.
Right. Between
it really
when
wasn't
he gets, like, the Candy World and
the Candy World, the Battlefield type world.
Yeah, the alien.
It really wasn't until the end that he finally accepts that his being destructive could be helpful, and then lo and behold, who winds up saving him is the main female character in the movie, learning how to control her glitch ability.
Right.
So it's that growth and development of the character.
It's not that they can't control it; it's that they can't control it at the start, and they have to learn.
And at the very end,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, and at the very end of Wreck-It Ralph, she becomes the most popular game in the arcade because she doesn't give up her glitch ability.
Right.
And she learned to control it.
They accept these things that they don't initially understand about themselves. That's
and honestly, it makes sense for movies like Frozen that you'd be scared shitless by a woman who just knocked your entire kingdom into eternal winter.
Right.
That's something to be feared. But anyway, that's this article. I'm really curious to hear your information. Like I said, I think a lot of this problem with Disney could be solved by making it a little bit more normalistic and having things like diverse groups of people around her and, applying some more of the tropes that they apply to men to women equally so that both can look foolish, because both usually do look foolish. It's just the proportions are wrong.
Yeah.
And I do hope Disney continues on some of the progress they've made with movies like Brave and Tangled and Frozen. And it keeps up because as much as you may not always like the movies, they were good things. Like I said, Wreck-It Ralph, I like the fact that Princess Vanellope winds up staying herself. That's the biggest thing is she's so desperate to win a race, but she wants to do it as her. And then she finds out, well, if you do, you're going to reset yourself back to what you were supposed to be. And she still does it for the good of the game and yet finds a way to stay herself.
Yeah, and then, like, at the very end, there's quite literally a scene where she's all dressed up and then glitches straight out of it back to her normal outfit.
Right. And I mean, it's all in, I think the thing this guy isn't understanding is it's context.
Yeah.
And some of it's wrong on Disney's part, but some of it's wrong on his interpretation. And I think if you're going to do anything with a Disney movie, especially if you have a little girl, use those as moments of education. If you're just going to blindly plop your child down in front of a Disney movie and not help them understand what's going on, then you kind of deserve what you get.
Yeah. You need to teach them these lessons.
TV isn't a babysitter.
And explain, like, what these things mean.
Right. You have to do that. So, hopefully that makes sense. And again, leave us some comments. Let us know what you think. So,
yeah.
One last thing to sort of tie us back to 2016 is, getting into the wrestling talk. Or do you want to talk about the Switch, or do you want to say that for another show?
Yeah, I think so. At this point, we need to save it for another show. This will already be almost an hour.
No, actually, it's been over an hour, dude. We're pushing an hour and a half. This is going to be a long podcast. Oh, wait, no, it's only been an hour. Sorry. My timer's screwed up. But anyway, I just wanted to say, just sort of do my own year end. It's going to be real quick because right now we're into that Royal Rumble period. Some big things that have happened is Undertaker being in the Rumble. I really, really, really am torn on... Here, let me do it this way. Here's how I would either book him winning the Rumble or not. If you're going to have him book winning the Rumble, he wins. Late entry, I don't think he should do it again from the number 30. It's too predictable. But I do think he should be one of the last 4 guys to enter the match. I think he can come in at like 26 and then win it, and it would be okay.
Sorry, you meant AJ?
No, I mean Undertaker.
Oh, Undertaker, sorry.
So, you have him win. And shockingly enough, you have him challenge for the Raw title against Kevin Owens. Now, I know a lot of people want to see him versus Cena, and so do I. And this is where you're going to get. Well, somewhere along the way, you have, and don't kill me for this, you have Cena beat Styles at the Rumble and get the belt back. And then, out of nowhere, you have Cena being the one saying, look, it's not too late. You can come challenge me. And you have him goading the Undertaker, between Royal Rumble and I think Fastlane is the pay-per-view they're doing now in February. But you have him just continue to goad him.
Yeah.
Even though the Undertaker's like, no, I want to, I've never made Raw. SmackDown was always my home. I want to make Raw. I have to conquer Raw before I go. I was on the first one. It only makes sense. You have him tease a lot of retirement stuff. Well, which is fine. So you have him at the last minute, Cena has done everything he could. He's convinced Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon not to name a number one contender. He's consumed by having Undertaker fight him. And I know a lot of you are like, oh God, it's a Cena heel turn 9. I don't think you need to turn him heel. It would be great if you did, but you can keep him the babyface because you can keep it to where he's almost making the Undertaker appear heel and almost making it like, look, you don't want to fight me because I am the guy who took your yard. I have been the guy who's ruled the WWE since you had to step away from wrestling full time. And just when it seems like everything's set, that does something to Undertaker. Those kind of comments finally get to Undertaker. And when he shows up at Fastlane to interfere in Cena's title defense, instead of attacking Cena and costing him the match, he attacks whoever Cena's fighting to guarantee Cena keeps the belt. And announces that he is going to officially challenge him. And then they fight at Mania. Cena retains. Let him have it for another month or two. And basically until he's got to go out and film something else. It'll, rebuild momentum for Styles, especially if they do want to move Styles to Raw. It takes the belt off him, gives them a chance to do a post-WrestleMania draft, whatever. Now, that's how I would do it if he wins. What I would rather see happen, spoiler alert, both stories are going to kind of involve John Cena because there's really no one left for him to have a big Mania match with that was going to be interesting.
Yeah.
That it isn't just going to be expected for him to win. And the nice thing about the streak being over, the only nice thing is he's not bound to winning at WrestleMania anymore. Sorry about that if you heard any background noise. Is it gets down to they have the championship match between Cena and Styles earlier in the night. Styles wins. But he wins on a fluke and Cena is livid and as a result, they demand he goes into the Rumble. McMahon and Bryan demand he goes into the Rumble. Somehow, some way, someone else is conveniently injured anyway. You could book this somehow, I'm sure. Cena goes into the Rumble, and it comes down to him and Undertaker, and he's so consumed with getting his rematch shot at Styles that he beats the Undertaker a little bit dirty. Maybe he takes advantage of a spot where Undertaker's getting whoever the third guy is left out and does this sort of, just dumps them both out and even tells him, hey, it's WrestleMania, it's the belt, it matters. And then you have Undertaker stalking him for that opportunity and costing him the, maybe you have Undertaker battle at Fastlane or whatever it is for February. Maybe you have him fight there and have him win the belt. So now he's the one Cena's got to go after. And then you could have it where Cena wins the belt back at Mania from Undertaker. Styles loses the belt to Undertaker, so he's losing to a legend, so it doesn't hurt as bad. And then you could have it where Cena takes it back at Mania, and then you could have Undertaker right away. So that's what I do. Now, so that's the big thing. That's the big storyline stuff now that wasn't already pretty much laid out. Just to take a look back at 2016, let's talk about what the best moments were, and we'll go with best workers.
Okay.
For me, the big three this year are big four, and I don't want to just sort of say, there's a lot of guys who really were the tops, and I kind of want to keep this thing on guys I thought did pretty important things for the business. And that's AJ Styles for showing that you can be a long run indie guy. And a lot of people are like, well, Daniel Bryan proved this first. Daniel Bryan always, he almost walked away from the business because he hadn't made it to WWE yet. Styles, on the other hand, really didn't care if he ever went there. And that's the important thing. Styles had the biggest year for showing you could make a run and make a career out of being an indie and Japan guy and then come to the WWE and show you could still do more.
Yeah.
Also, I think The Miz is a top guy this year for really showing what a true top to bottom heel is. I mean, if you ever want to talk about a guy who pushed his way into mattering, it was The Miz. A guy who did not come into wrestling the right way, as a lot of old timers would think, was annoying for the first 10 or so years of his career, to finally take everything you learned, put it all together, make that moment click, have that interaction with Daniel Bryan that was probably the best promo of the year, short of Daniel Bryan's retirement. That was a win. Also, now I really want to say that they should share this honor with the team that made them, but the only reason why I'm counting them alone is, and What Culture said this too, is you could take the Revival and split them apart, and I don't think they'd work. However, you could take Team DIY and split them apart, and you'd have two top stars. So I'm saying Team DIY for really being that final touch and really being the glue that fully brought together great tag team wrestling. Because you had the Revival wrestling great matches, but there really wasn't a lot of teams to put them with that were as good and really told as compelling of a story as they told with Team DIY. And that was all on Team DIY. So
yeah,
that's a big deal. And then I also want to point out, sort of an honorable mention, Adrian Neville, because the cruiserweight division without his return would be dead. And he's doing a lot to finally get that ball rolling again. So hopefully they keep it up. And then we'll talk about that later. Now, of course, the other side of the coin is, let's talk about guys or situations that have sort of hurt the business this year. And again, this is going to seem like a little bit of a wonky list. I'm not talking bad wrestlers. There's always been bad wrestlers. I'm talking about especially guys who should have done more or was in a position to do more, that for whatever reason their position is they're just holding things down. And again, sorry for the background noise. I'm going to start with probably the most shocking name on this list, Mick Foley. I love Mick Foley, and I love him in a commissioner role.
I was surprised to see that was on your list.
But his health is really catching up to him. And it's just, being reminded of what this business does to you is never a good thing. And it's so sad to see that it really distracts from whatever he's trying to get across on screen. Mixing in with the fact he can't seem to do a promo to save his life correctly anymore, when considering that he was one of the best on the mic for a long time, hurts even more. And I just wish he would just accept and move on, that his time in front of the camera at least is over. So we'll see what the new year brings for that.
Yeah,
also,
what conditions does he actually have? I mean, I know
there's none diagnosed. But you got to think the guy had multiple concussions. There was that match with The Rock where he took 10 or so unprotected hard chair shots to the head, falling off the cell, going through the cell, through the ring.
He's definitely been through.
It's definitely all related to neurological problems. I mean, his walking the last few weeks has been hampered by needing hip surgery that he's been putting off until he can secure the funds or whatnot. I forget exactly what he said, and it's out there on Twitter. You can find out.
Or put off to someone else.
Right. Stephanie McMahon's next because she refuses to let go of the authority style version of her, which makes her flip-flop between being a baby face and a heel. And when she's playing the more heel side, it's always at the expense of the talent that an authority figure is there to eventually help get over. Face or heel, they either get over by giving you the rub, or you giving them the rub, of beating you, or they get over by being your lackey and getting pushed by your protection. And she's not doing that right, and she has to flip-flop in between, like I said, to where it makes it confusing to figure out what she's really doing week to week. And what sucks is she plays a good general manager role really well. If you look back in SmackDown right before Paul Heyman took over when she was the general manager, she did it really well. And it's just been too much of a down every time she's been on screen since this all started, that, I'm ready to see her go away. Another one that I want to highlight, Kalisto, for being clearly the breakout member, which isn't hard to do, I admit.
For a second, I thought you meant Carlito, and
no.
I was like, I haven't thought of that guy.
Of Lucha Dragons, they really exposed him bad on the draft show, where the interview he really sort of just mumbled through and then walked away from. The giant killer gimmick just not working for him when he was going up against Alberto Del Rio, when he had his U.S. or I think is a U.S. Intercontinental title run, his mid-card title run, or whatever. I mean, he's just really not been a consistent player when he should be, because he's got the talent to be, and I think it's a confidence problem, and it's really hurting him becoming the next Rey Mysterio, which is definitely what they have him earmarked for. And in a lot of ways, not playing to your strengths is why Titus O'Neil is on my list. Here's a guy who's had to go through a mountain of shit in the WWE, if we're being honest, with how they handled him with grabbing Vince's arm at Daniel Bryan's retirement, some of the lackluster storylines he's been in. But the problem is this insistence to play him as a heel when the version of him that works is this sort of counter his image goofy party guy.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because they're putting him in this angle now where he keeps trying to join the New Day, who we'll get to. And they keep embarrassing him when I'm like, why not? The New Day needs to be refreshed. He could play that goofy over positive role really well, especially if they made a move to move the New Day back to being heel. He could back up Big E as being the second, big muscle guy. And then when that all eventually fails, it's a great way to split them up, because maybe you have a power play between him and Big E, or, whatever. And they could do so much more with it, is the point I'm trying to make. Right. And then the New Day, because it's like, I know they're a merchandise selling machine, and I know they get over with all their crowd chants, but they've coasted for so long on a storyline we knew was going to happen that I can't watch them anymore. I mean, they have no real direction now that they've lost the title. The story with Titus O'Neil, they've already sort of shot their wad on it because they've made him look so stupid every week. It's like, where else can they go? Anything they do now is going to feel forced with this. So it's like, I think them losing the title should have been the catalyst for them to split. And they did nothing with it. They just shook the hands of the team that beat them and moved on. Okay. I mean, come on, that's bad booking. And, there's some other things, and we're really pushing over our hour, so I want to just sort of wrap it up and say that's it for 2016. Now, looking forward to 2017. Here's some big things to fix WWE. So for Raw, I know I'm not going to get this, but they need to go back to 2 hours. 3 hours is killing them. Promote the cruiserweights properly. You don't have to make them every month where they've got a major feud, but when you want to make when you want to make a feud happen, you've got to give it the time you give the rest of your feuds on the show. They're not doing that. They need to ditch the general manager, commissioner bullshit that's on both brands. The club needs to be presented as unstoppable monsters again, or they're never going to be good. Honestly, what I'd love to see happen is you have the Revival come up and go up against the club and let them just have some hard-hitting, old-school tag matches. Yeah. And finally, and this is just more of a wish because he plays it better, make Seth Rollins heel again. I'm hoping that happens at the next draft when, after it's all said and done, he can work heel against a babyface Cena or something of the like. Over on SmackDown, they're really doing well, but the things that they really need to do is The Miz needs a championship run, like a world championship run as a top heel. Transversely, they need to create a better long-term babyface. I love that they finally turned Dolph Ziggler heel again. He works better as a heel, but really, him and Ambrose are the two top babyfaces, and Ambrose doesn't do well in the main event babyface level. He just doesn't. They've goofed that character up too much.
Yeah.
And they really do need to make the tag teams they have mean a little bit more, because it's really just the American Alpha Uso show. Once the Rhino, Heath Slater thing ended. NXT, this is going to sound funny, but NXT is not a good development territory because so few of the guys make it to the main roster. know how to navigate the waters of the main roster. So if their gimmick doesn't work, they don't know what to do to fix it. So they've got to get better at actually preparing these guys for the main roster. I understand you need to find talent somewhere, but if you're just going to bring in these established indie guys to run the show, that doesn't help anyone. So I think there should be a limit on the number of them they have active at a time. And
yeah, that makes sense.
They need to clear out some of those guys and move them to the main roster. Samoa Joe, Nakamura, Bobby Roode.
Wasn't Joe an ex-wrestler, though?
Huh?
Wasn't Samoa Joe, like, an ex-main roster wrestler?
No, he was never on the main roster for WWE.
Then, oh, wait. Or wasn't he, TNA?
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
That's TNA's indie, dude. I mean, more or less they're indie. Yes, they try to be national, but they're indie.
Again,
so those guys need to go. And I'm just going to do this for fun. What can TNA do to survive post Dixie Carter and Billy Corgan with Anthem in charge? There's actually a couple things they can do, and they're making some right moves. They're bringing in Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantell on some kind of creative role. Jeff Jarrett's not the smartest guy when it comes to booking wrestling, but he's got some good ideas. Problem is he's a Russo fan, so I really hope this isn't the inroad for Russo to come back, although I think Anthem's smarter than that. But I think they need more wrestling minds. I think the Hardys need to evolve. They're in that very dangerous water where, yes, the broken mat stuff's still working, but it's treading that thin line between being liked because it's creative and being laughed at because it's overplayed. And that's a hard line to see, and he could still evolve and steer it away from there. But if they just keep up with what they're doing, the goofiness is going to really start showing through, and they're going to get reactions for the wrong reasons, and all of the work to get over that the Hardys have done is going to go away. And I don't want to see that happen. Because while I'm not the biggest fan of it personally, I do see its value to the wrestling business. And finally, they need to, in a lot of weird ways, they need to get back to basics. Like, it's okay to try new things in the storyline, but when you have goofy gimmick championships that are meant to make them look more realistic, it's like the Brawl for All. You don't mix things that are ostensibly a shoot with things that are a work. So when you have a title that's determined by rounds and points and whatever, it's great for the short term, but sooner or later the grand championship just needs to be evolved into whatever you want to call a nice, simple mid-card belt. And that's what TNA needs to do to get back on track. So I think that's it for the week. We're almost a half an hour over our usual show. So,
yeah.
But I really wanted to get in. Again, let us know what you think about the Disney movie topics. If how you would book Undertaker, either winning or not winning the Rumble and still finding his way into WrestleMania. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave us a review on iTunes. And I promise that here soon we will be doing something with the YouTube channel. For Nerds and Night Gaming, I am Kid Thunder DJ.
I'm Fire 47.
Have a great night.